Hello and welcome to Lesson 2 in Programming Fundamentals and our Introduction to C#. In today's lesson we're going to be looking at selection. Now if you are getting any use out of these videos, please consider liking, subscribing, positive comment below, and also consider watching the videos to the end because of course it does help with the good old YouTube algorithm. Okay, so obviously the last lesson we looked at doing some simple maths in our good old hello world, and today we're going to be looking at more use of variables and assignment, a little bit of debugging possibly, and then certainly we're going to be looking at selection, sort of the main if statement. So one of our main programming constructs is branching, also known as selection. It's where the program will run a different set of instructions based on the input it receives. So a variable in programming, a variable is a value that can change. So for example, we basically ask the computer to give us a little bit of RAM where we can store something. So for example here at memory address 0, now this wouldn't actually ever really happen, but in memory address 0 I've got this binary number, and if I add it up it becomes 65, and 65 is how the letter capital A is stored in the ASCII chart. So that's all the variable is. We ask for a memory address and we store the raw data, the raw binary information in there. So when we actually create a variable in most programming languages, we have to consider what the data type is. And in C# we are going to be specifying the data types we use, like we saw in the last lesson. So when I say I would like to declare a variable, it just asks the operating system to give us a little bit of RAM to use. So for example, last lesson I created a variable called length, and I want it to be a data type integer. Again, the computer doesn't care because it's just, again, a bit of binary information, but it helps us keep our programming consistent and sort of work with the data correctly. So there's some quite common data types, and these are sort of the 5 that I tend to use the most. I've got a Boolean, which basically stores 1 or 0, or we'll more frequently see it as true or false. An integer, which we saw last lesson, a whole number, so an example would be 5. Then we have things called real numbers, which are frequently known as either floats or doubles. A float is just a number with a decimal point. A double is a float that can store twice as many decimal places or twice as many digits. Then a character, which is just a single character, which can be any symbol on the keyboard, letter, number, special character. And then a string. Now I never consider a string to actually be a data type. I consider it to be a data structure, but we often use them as data types, and in which case a sequence of characters. So for example, somebody's name. So there's a lot more data types, and there's even more than on screen, but if you want to pause it, have a read through, familiarise yourself with some of these. These are a lot of the data types that I often don't actually use. So this is a good point to sort of have a little think about which data types we use. So for example, if you were trying to keep the score of a game, I would probably use an integer. You know, they've scored 2 points. Username, fairly obvious, it's going to be a string. Someone's age, again back to an integer. Email address, also a string. House number. Now many people will jump straight into an integer, but what if someone lives at 22A? So really we have to store it as a string. And same with telephone number. This is often like a bit of a trick question. We do not store it as an integer, we store it as a string. For one, we don't want to lose any leading zeros, and 2, we shouldn't be doing any math operations on a telephone number. So again, we can store it as a string. Anyway, on to the main part of this quick session, which is selection. So selection is a decision in the program. What happens if something does this? What should the program do? The simplest, most common selection is the if statement. If condition, then do this. So in good old classic basic programming, I want to output how old are you? Input age, and then if the age is greater than or equal to 13, I can output you can use any popular social networking site, and then I end the if statement. Now I'm going to put this into some actual context now. So for example, last lesson I set these challenges: a temperature converter, inputting shapes, width and height of rectangles, depth of the volume of cuboids. But I'm going to just sort of recap on this: input the radius of a circle. So I want to say output the diameter, circumference and volume, which of course will be a sphere. So hopefully you did actually have a go at this, and in pseudocode or in sequence or in logic or algorithm it would look something like this. Input. I'm going to input the radius, but I want it to be between 1 and 10. My process, I want the diameter is equal to the radius times 2. Circumference is the radius times 2 times pi. The volume is 4 divided by 3 times pi times radius times radius times radius. So basically radius cubed. which obviously this is the algorithm you might have seen in a maths class. And then finally, I output it by outputting the diameter, circumference and volume. This is the way I generally think when I'm creating programs. What is the data coming into it? What calculations do I need to do with the process? And then what am I finally outputting? If you don't have a program that does all three of these, then you've probably not got a program. And in which case you need to have a little bit of think about what it is you're trying to create. So let's have a look at that. I've already created a simple C# program, same as last lesson. I'm going to just copy the comments, oh, it's not. There we go. So I'm just copying in the bit of information that I got from PowerPoint, so I can sort of see what it is I'm trying to create. So I don't forget what I'm trying to do. This is how I sometimes put comments into a program. So I'm just going to put, I'm going to copy and paste this line because I'm lazy. So I want you to say, enter a radius 1 to 10. I think that's what I said. Yeah, 1 to 10. I'm now going to input, so I need a variable, I need a data type for this. So the radius is going to be an int radius equals console dot read line. Now, just like last lesson, this is a string. It's going to try and input this as a string. It even says so on the error message. Where has it gone? There, cannot convert string to integer. So again, just like last time, I'm going to say int dot parse. And this will convert whatever I'm typing in into an integer. And again, it could crash if it's not a valid number. At a future lesson, I will show you how we can check to see if it's a valid number before converting. So I've now got the input radius. So I could, I suppose, at this point, put that comment in. Input. I'm now going to do my process, which of course is now my diameter. So I want a diameter, again, integer. Diameter equals my radius times 2. I want my circumference, int. I'm actually going to go over to float now, because as soon as I start multiplying by pi, it's going to start wanting to actually have more decimal places. So if I now say float radius, oops, that's not what it is, circumference. Brain's gone because I've stopped. Circumference equals our radius times 2 times pi. Now I can't just write pi in, I could write 3.142, but in this case I will just go math. Now I can do the math, that's going to be a double, and math f is going to be a float, so I'm going to stick with the float for now. Math.pi, there we go. So now it will give me a 32-bit pi to 32 bits, so it should be fairly accurate. So that's now my circumference. I want to, of course, now do my volume. Oops. So again, I will stick with float. So my volume, now this one's a bit more tricky to type in, so float volume equals my, so 4 divided by 3, so I can just go 4 divided by 3 times math f dot pi again, was it times, and just for the, I find it easier to do this, radius times radius times radius. You don't need to put it in brackets because the whole bid mass should pick up on it, but I just like it, it helps me separate it inside my mind. So there we go, I've now got the diameter, circumference and volume, and now I can finally output these. So again, I'll put a little comment in, output, and I can just go console dot write line. This is where I can now just put diameter, copy this. So again, I'm being a little bit lazy. Circumference, oops, not with a capital C, there we go, circumference. And then finally volume. Now so far, all I've done is recapped what you could have done between last lesson and this lesson, which is to just do the whole volume thing. What I need to do though is put some selection statements in. So if I just try this, I'm going to press 5. There we go, I've got 10 for my diameter, 31 for my circumference and 392 for my volume. Please feel free to go and check that on a calculator or some online to see whether the maths adds up. Now what I didn't do was some selection. What if this was the wrong number? What if I've typed in a big number, so 100 or a minus number, a negative number? I want to just do a quick an if statement. So rather than do this calculation, I'm going to check. I'm going to, we have to come back up here. I'm just going to say if radius is greater than equal to, sorry, if it's greater than or equal to 1, and, so I don't just write the word and, I have to put and that's the same in C, C++, C, Java, JavaScript, etc. And radius is less than or equal to 10, So notice I had to put the word radius twice, not just radius is greater than 1 and less than 10. I have to put the same word again. Then I can do this little bit of code. So I'm now going to put a brace there, come to the bottom, put another brace. Yep, C plus Visual Studio knew I wanted to indent properly, so it's moved everything over. So now it won't do it if it's not between those two numbers. So if I just try this, so I'm just going to put in 20, I would expect it to do absolutely nothing. There we go, it's done nothing, the program's ended. But what I can do is just put an else command in. So now, if it's this, do this block of code. If it wasn't this, if this was actually failed, if it was false, then do this. In which case I can now say console.writeLine, please enter a number between 1 and 10. Now obviously this is only going to give us one go, so if I try it again and say I put a negative number in, -5, please enter them between 1 and 10, but the program's finished. What we need to do is find some way to repeat this over and over, but that's going to be in our next lesson. So what I'd like to do obviously is have a go at this, play with the radius, play with the inputs, maybe change these numbers around a little bit, try some different values, experiment a little bit. And then once you've done that, can you create a little program to ask and respond to questions? So if it asks you your name, then it can say, hello, your name. What about asking you your favourite colour? What about your age, like you've already seen? What about asking your favourite game platform? Could you turn this into a little quiz? I mean, this will be a little chatbot, obviously nowhere near as good as ChatGPT. To give you a bit of a starting sample, this is what I might do. Console.writeLine, welcome to chatbot. WriteLine, what is your favourite colour? And I can say if answer is equal to. So this is, are they the same? So if we want to check if they are the same rather than greater than, we have to use two equal signs. So if the answer is the same as purple rather than answer is purple. If the answer is the same as purple, I can say, wow, that's my favourite colour too. But if it's anything else, I can say, ew, I don't like. And then by opening speech marks and closing them, then using the plus sign, I'm appending these two strings. So it will say this string and then it will also output whatever you typed in. But turn it into a little quiz, turn it into a little chatterbot, and then give it to a friend or a family member to have a little play with. I've seen a lot of students have a lot of fun making things like this. Okay, again, if you found this useful, please like, please subscribe, and stick around for the next video. See you soon.